Hi there, so this is Brandon Manjivar, and we're here at the Christmas Stroll craft show, and we're about to go see what it's all about. So let's go. We're here at the craft show, and I'm here with Priscilla, and she's been doing this, and she organizes the event. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Priscilla McIntosh, and welcome to the 26th annual Christmas Stroll Craft Show.
All right, so this is the 26th craft show.
Annual, yep.
Wow. So do you organize the whole thing?
Myself and my co-chair.
Your co-chair. How long does it take you to organize everything?
We start in September, and it's a juried show, so people have to send in an application with their photos and a short description of their work.
Okay.
And then we have the hard chore of trying to pick and choose who's going to be in the show.
Oh, so you have to do some cuts.
We have to do cuts. There's always a long waiting list. You have to live here year-round. So your items have to be made on Nantucket.
So those are those the only two requirements, or do you have more for people?
We try to have a diversity in the items that come into the show.
Oh, I see.
So we could have a whole room of jewelers if that was the case.
Right. How many people do you think you get every year that come here?
For customers?
Yeah, like customers.
That's hard to say. Every year is different, but I would say several thousand a day.
Wow.
That's my guess.
So, looks like a pretty big event, huh? It's like, it happens, it's always this big, it's like very crowded.
Yeah, we have 39 vendors.
39?
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Rebecca Chapa. My company is called Ambergris, and I take things, recycle them, and make new things out of them. So I make notebooks out of old VHS tape covers and old Monopoly games. I make ornaments out of seashells, and I paint sand dollars with Day of the Dead figures and things like that. So I get inspiration from the ocean and nature and things that I find and put together.
So Nantucket is like a perfect place for.
It is. This island is really needs to recycle things a lot because we have everything comes from somewhere else. And so, for example, most of everything really on this table came from our own take it or leave it pile at the recycling center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at the dump. So it's fun to be able to take things and give them new life.
Right. And how long have you been doing this for?
This is my third year here at this show, so it's about a couple years, and it just sort of been really fun to craft and come here and then be able to sell it to people that are visiting the island and tell them about, Nantucket and give them something to go home with.
Yeah. So you do all that type of stuff with like recycled things?
Mm-hmm. Like old tapes and Monopoly games. What's really cool is that I found the notebook maker, the thing that punches the holes, actually at the take it or leave it pile also. So it was sort of like dumb luck in a way, because I found that, and then I was noticing everyone's getting rid of their old VHS tape covers, and then I thought, oh, why? That's really cool. The cardboard is really neat. Why not put it together and make something new out of it? So these are all blank notebooks, so people can, take notes, write their inspirations down in them and things like that.
Interesting. Now, is that the only thing you do, just notebooks, or do you do other stuff?
I do like this, for example, which is I take a sand dollar and make it into a magnet, and this one's the Virgen de Guadalupe, the Mexican sort of Virgin Mary.
Right.
So I do that, and then I make Matchbox travel shrines. These are kind of fun. I do buy the Matchbox, but this is with the Mexican game La Loteria, and put little good luck charms in there for people to take on their life journeys.
Here I am with Tina, and she's going to talk to us a little bit more about her shop here.
What we have here, we actually started this about a year ago, and it's a recycle program where we started using recycled beach fence that we find at the beach here, and house shingles, which are from every job site. They've been stripped off the houses, and that's never ending. There's an unlimited supply.
Yeah.
But kind of repurposing them to make something functional, which is the coasters. And so we make the coasters, put them together, and then people can use them in their homes, and they make great gifts. And actually, I've had a pretty good year. It's been nice.
Really? So all of these is made up of recycling
Yeah,
stuff?
like we've gone to different beaches in the wintertime last year after all the storms, and we were like just pulling the beach out of the beach fence out of the sand, and then we'll go back. I'll clean it some, but I don't want to change the look of it too much because I like the weathered look. And we'll cut them, put it together, do the roping. There's cork on the back, and we'll make it, and I'll urethane it as well with a water-based floor finish. And so they're really durable and they hold up, and that way we kind of clean up the beach. We actually clean up a lot more than just beach fence when we're at the beach. Mm-hmm. And so we do that, but also with the shingles, we kind of keep more than needs to be taken to the landfill. We kind of, make that a lesser amount by using the shingles as well.
So how long have you been doing all of this for?
Just a year.
Just a year?
Yeah. The wreaths, which I paint as well, I've been doing those for a long time because I'm a decorative painter here in Ireland, but I started doing those a long time ago for some clients of mine with the Historical Association, and they would auction them off at their wreath show. And so that I've been doing for quite a while. And this I just started.
Okay.
So
those paintings up there, and those you paint them and then
yes.
just decorate them
and
with that?
I'll pick all the shells too. I have jars and jars of different shells, and I'll do this and kind of a play off between a painting of a Nantucket scene and a sailor's Valentine.
We are Isabel and Cleo. We started about 3 years ago. We used to be on the wharf where the High Line was, and 2 years ago we moved to our new location, which is right above the Scrim Chandler on Center Street. The owner named the store after her mother and grandmother, who both taught her how to knit, and she started just knitting individual pieces and selling them on Etsy. And then eventually her business just grew in popularity, so she was able to found this store. And everyone in the shop helps knit and learns how to knit to help with the product supplies. We also make all sorts of items such as hand warmers, arm warmers, neck cowls, scarves, ponchos. So it's a very diverse business, and we sell our stock to tons of locations all over the United States, from New York to LA and even Santa Monica.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So how long has this been for, like the whole company? It's been for 3 years.
Yeah, it's been for 3 years as a brick and mortar store, and then it's been even longer when she started selling online. And since I would say about 5 years ago is when she really started getting online sales busy, and it's just grown exponentially since then.
So are you any type like related to her, or just like?
No. I'm not related to her in any way. I'm just one of the workers. We are sort of a family. We're very close-knit. We all learn her technique, her process. She's basically passing her family tradition on to us in a way. So, yeah.
Well, and you make all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our stuff is still made on knitting machines, which aren't very common anymore. They stopped making them in around the 80s, but there are still a few companies who make them. And that's how we get most of our patterns for our cowls and our arm warmers. And there are a few select items that we still knit by hand to keep their integrity and softness. So it's a combination of both machine and still handmade. But we strive to make everything as traditional and the way that her mother and her grandmother taught her.
So here I am with George, and he does all this stuff by hand, so we're just gonna have him explain to us what he does.
Yeah, this is all wood turning, because everything I make is round, and everything I make is useful. I don't make any gallery stuff that you would put on a shelf. Everything here is something that you would use. Wine bottle stopper, a pen, a door stop, a candle stopper, a pizza cutter, whatever. It's all stuff that you would use. If you have to dust it, I don't make it.
So how long have you been doing all of this for?
Well, I started in grammar school, and I am now 82. So that's how long you figure it out.
So it looks like we'll have to do a little bit of math on that one. And like, how do you come to this like craft shop like every year?
Yeah, I've been coming to this show for 20 years, over 20 years. And I usually do another show. I do 2 shows a year, that's all I do.
You have like your own like business, right? Like how you get all this stuff now?
It's just a thing I just started doing after I retired. But I've always done woodworking most of my life.
So this is the 26th annual Christmas Stroll Craft Show. It's the longest running cooperatively managed craft show of its kind on Nantucket. Priscilla McIntosh has been doing it since the very beginning. I've just jumped on board a few years ago. Our criteria are that all of the vendors make their own items for sale and that they must be Nantucket locals.
All right. So looks like you do some of your stuff too, like some handmade
I do all
stuff.
Of it. Yes. Yeah, it's all hand woven. I don't spin the yarn, but I make the cloth that then makes the scarves, blankets, what have you.
How long does it take you to do all of that?
Totally depends on the thing.
On the thing you make.
Yeah, but that's probably the most common question I've been asked. But yeah, it depends really on how thin the yarn is. Yeah.
So how you just jumped on board? You said, well, why?
Yep,
Why
4 years
did you?
ago.
You know, you just got interested in it.
I've actually been in this show for much longer than that. Have been vending at the show since, I don't know, probably, I think this is my 14th year in the show. And so, yeah, Priscilla needed someone to help her out, so I've been co-chairing with her for the last 4 years.
What is it that you do here in the show?
So I keep honeybees here on Nantucket, of course, and I am selling honey. Yeah.
So you keep like honeybees, like you have like a place for them to like stay?
Yep, that's right. I have about 25 or so honeybee hives, and every spring through early fall, I harvest my honey. So I'll get my first harvest of honey about the end of July, and that honey will be from the spring of that year. So it takes a little while for the bees to collect honey or nectar from the flowers and actually turn it into honey in the hive. And then I'll get a different harvest of honey, like I mentioned, in the summer and the fall, and you can see that the color of the honey is actually different. So the lighter the honey, the earlier in the season it comes from. So lighter honey is from spring and summer, and darker honey is from late summer and fall. And the reason the honeys are different colors is because the flowers change through the season. So the bees are taking nectar from different flowers.
So how long have you been coming to the show for?
This show I've probably done 6 or 7 years, I'm guessing. I've been keeping bees on Nantucket about 10 or so. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you sell your honey, and is that like all you do, just like honey, or do you do something else?
No, I do some other things on island. I work down at the Shellfish Hatchery on Brant Point. You may know that it's a propagation facility for scallops, primarily, but also oysters and clams. And that's part of the town of Nantucket. It's the Natural Resources Department. I'm also I've done bird monitoring for the town and shellfish wardening and all that kind of stuff. So I do a lot of stuff. I go out commercial fishing on occasion, and I even make some Nantucket baskets once in a while.
Oh, I do a lot of different things. I do hand knitting, as you see here. I do a little bit of jewelry, and I do needlepoint design. I live here on the island year-round, and this is kind of what I do in my free time. I work at the hospital also, so.
Oh, really? So you do that too, all the jewelry?
Yep.
You do that too?
Yep, I do that, and I do this, and I do the needlepoint design.
Wow.
That's right.
I'm a busy girl.
It's always good to stay busy.
It is good to stay busy, yep.
So you do that too?
Uh-huh.
That's right there. Wow.
Yeah.
So how long does it take you to do all this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to say how long it takes because I do it in different stages. So I don't sit down and start and then finish like in one sitting. So I do a lot of different stages.
Oh, okay.
So I'd say that my sweaters, probably I do the main part on a knitting machine, which is still a manual process. And then the finishing is all hand finishing, and then of course sewing on the buttons, tying in the yarns, all that. So I'd say 2 to 3 hours a sweater, depending on the size, of course.
And what about the jewelry? Do you just find rocks or?
I buy beads and I buy stones, and I do a lot of that on the beach in the summer. I take that to the beach with me, or my husband does cooking, so while he's cooking, I'll do some jewelry. So, and then again, that's kind of in stages as well.
I do a lot of wood carving, and it's a combination of chip carving and three-dimensional carving. So all of the pieces that you see here they're carved. They could be painted or they could be stained and urethane.
Now, do you do the painting as well, or you do the painting? Oh, and you're just helping her?
I live up in Boston, and I come to help her sell at the craft fairs. I am, however, a Nantucket native. I was born here.
Okay. So how long have you been doing all of this for?
I started actually in my mother's apartment, and she lived here on Nantucket at Academy Hill. And I started in January of the year 2000, teaching myself how to chip carve. And I'll hold up a piece. That's a piece of chip carving. See how the chips are taken out? Yeah.
So you're self-taught. No one taught you how to do this?
Nope.
Wow.
I think we started in 2005. Yep. So it's been 11 years. Yeah.
11 years. Wow. And all of this is handmade?
Yes.
Wow. That is very nice.
A lot of it, some of these, for instance, are dragonflies that are made out of Nantucket cedar driftwood. So I use a lot of driftwood that I find on the beach.
So it's kind of like recycling to...
Yeah.
So I've got everything from toffee and brittle and caramels to neck wraps and sachets, a little of everything. Gifts.
Everything.
Yeah.
So how do you get all this stuff together? Like
So I work out of the green at night when they're closed because they're way too busy during the day to use their kitchen. And it really all started with the toffee. We used to give it as teacher gifts when I was a kid. And everyone said you should sell it. So I kind of changed the recipe a little bit, made it a little bit better quality ingredients. And it just kind of morphed into this selection, brittle and peppermint bark and caramels. And I've always loved being in the kitchen, and so this is how it happened.
That's what it turns out.
Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. I saw some dark chocolate there too.
Yep, dark chocolate, beer and pretzel caramels. Use the beer from the brewery. Caramels with Kentucky bourbon, something different.
And what are these? Are these jellies?
I've got some marmalade, apple butter, do a bunch of different jams. Grape jam, I go out and pick the grapes in the fall, late August, early September when they're ready. Same with beach plums, and I'm out of beach plum jam because it's popular. But it was a really good grape season, so I picked a lot of grapes in a very short amount of time, so I've got plenty of that.
Well, that's good. So all of this is homemade.
Yep, I make everything here on island, all by myself.
All by yourself?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
That is very interesting. How long have you been here on the show for?
I've done this show for 7 years, I think.
7 years.
The first year I did it, it was just toffee. So it's evolved a little bit since then.
A little bit?
A little bit, just a little
Looks
bit.
like a lot.
This is my full-time job. This is what I do work other jobs, but this is most of my time.
Your main focus.
Yeah.
All right, so here we are with, what's your name again?
David Lazarus.
David Lazarus. So how long have you been doing this for?
Well, I've been an artist all my life, Brandon, probably 60-odd years.
Really?
But what we're doing here today is selling some works on paper.
Mm-hmm.
I am an oil painter primarily, but I also love to make watercolors on paper and prints in particular on paper. What I have here are two different types of print today. I have this, which perhaps you'll be able to see on the camera. This is called a dry point print. This is made by scratching an image directly into a plate, and I actually use an unusual material, which is plexiglass. I scratch the image into the plexiglass, I rub ink into the scratches, then I place it on a etching press, and put a piece of paper on the plate, roll it through the press, and the pressure of the press transfers the image onto the paper. So you end up with an image like this. The limitation of this is that after about 10 or 12 passes through the press, these lines on the plate become squashed flat. So you don't get 150 prints, you get maybe 10 or 12. So it's a very limited form of printmaking, called a limited edition. The other prints that we make are almost akin to a rubber stamp. This is a different technique. It's called a relief print. And what you have with a relief print is you're cutting away the surface and then you're rolling ink onto the areas that remain in relief or high up on the block. So what you actually print are the areas that you've left alone on the block. So it's a little bit like a rubber stamp. Right. But it's a more detailed version of that.
So how exactly did you get into this working?
I've always loved black and white illustrations. You know, the early old children's books, the kind of Howard Pyle and artists like that. So I've always loved that, and I just naturally sort of got into printmaking as a result of loving that. I also used to do scrimshaw, which is a craft involving scratching on whale teeth. That was an easy segue for me to get into this because it's exactly the same technique, same tools, everything. And then, of course, I have watercolors, and we all know how to do a watercolor. You water and a brush and some color.
And some color.
Yeah.
Well, that is very interesting. How long have you been coming to the show for?
I've done this show, I think, twice, last year and the year before. But I've known about it for years, and it's a great popular venue. Lots of people arrive here for the Stroll, obviously. So it's a great opportunity to have what I call a less expensive art product to show here.
Wow. Well, all of this looks very interesting, and you all do it by yourself, or do you have any help?
Well, I do the making of the artwork by myself, but my wonderful wife, Lisa, runs the show. I'm not allowed to touch the credit cards or money because she's much better at that than I am.
Wow. Well, it was nice meeting you, David, and
nice to meet
very
you,
interesting.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so that wraps up the show, folks, and thank you to all the vendors, NCTV, and the Nantucket Hispanic Literature Group for helping out. See you next one.